Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. And we do have a quorum. We have one member absent.
The first thing we're going to do is public comment. So we don't have a sign-up list. So if you want to just, the first person, go up to the podium. And if you want to speak, if you want to just stand up, perhaps in line, we'll just take one after another that way.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Balisic, and I live on Vareo Court. And I wanted to just speak to you about the Florida Evergreen contract. And I would like to ask you to please take a closer look at the proposal for the increase for those getting their services. Our current contract is at a rate of $115.75 per month. That includes weeding, pruning, irrigation, edging, trimming, lawn cutting, and lawn care. This 5-year contract says that it will be adjusted yearly at the Tampa Consumer Pricing Index of no more than 5%, not less than 1%. I looked up the Tampa CPI, and it was 2.23% for 2018 and 2.1% year to date. The current proposal is to raise their contract next year at a rate of 5%, which is much higher than the Tampa CPI. In addition to that, I know that there was discussion that our docs read that we must have the irrigation services for replacement of sprinkler heads, boxes, whatnot, and that the docs also read for plant replacement. The proposal was to have an increase of $5 per month per household for the plant replacement, $5 for the irrigation piece. I did watch the Finance Committee meeting, and I know Jerry discussed that they have looked at eliminating the plant replacement piece. So that would bring that down $5 per month. I wanted to have the board address that piece of how that would occur, that we're able to avoid the plant replacement piece. Also, in addition to that, I really think that there needs to be a hard look on accountability. Who is responsible for monitoring Florida Evergreen? I know that they're here on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock, which is wonderful for homeowners that are available to meet with them, but who is actually monitoring what they're doing when they walk out the door? I've talked to numerous neighbors of mine on Vareo. I have quotes from some of them who asked me to share that with you today, where they are talking to workers and saying, I have replaced these plants and they continue to die, and the workers saying to them, well, we're not responsible for the care of your plants for being healthy. We're just responsible for weeding and trimming. We're not responsible for the care and health of your plant. I wanted to know who's tracking these concerns, how often these concerns are coming up, and if that's not in place, then if we as homeowners are asked to pay this yearly increase every year for 5 years, and we continue to have concerns about the services that we're not getting, we're not seeing this irrigation specialist that we're already paying a $28 per month salary for, where are we going from here? So I'm asking you to take that time in moving forward with this budget. It was an alarming figure for these homeowners to hear that they could be paying up to $50 extra per quarter on top of a proposed HOA increase when the CPI is half of what you're proposing their increase to be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll go ahead. And can you all hear me? Test. 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 better? Okay, so, gonna list, the CPI, so the reason for the raise, the CPI has to do with the service contract. So the things that we're talking about aren't things that we have already been paying for. These are up and beyond, so the irrigation and the plants that you referred to would not be part of the current contract. So if there's an addition of services, that would not be included in that CPI number. I will say the difference between the irrigation and the plant material. So after further review and looking at the exact language in the documents, as far as it relates to irrigation, the documents call for the HOA to be responsible for irrigation maintenance to include, and it specifically listed all of the irrigation components. Then when it talked about landscape maintenance, there was not such language that specifically dictated we do it. In essence, you could make an argument either way. So we decided it was more prudent to continue the way we have been operating since inception for the plant material and save homeowners a little bit of money that way. And quite honestly, it would be a little bit more equitable if every homeowner just took care of their plant rather than all the homeowners pitching in for one neighbor's dead plant, whatever.
So are you saying there will be no, so I was understanding that the figure that you put out at a meeting included a CPI increase as well?
Yeah, it will. The bottom line, and so this is the second part of my statement. We are working really hard, have been for the last week, and will continue for the next week on landscaping both contracts. I'm not ready to announce right now where we're at, but we are working hard, and we believe that we will ultimately be able to get both numbers lower than what was on the original proposed budget. So the original proposed budget had a $6 per month per house increase for landscaping and the plant replacement, and then a $6 per month per house for 5. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, 5. The 6 was on the actual contract for the extra land.
I thought it went from 115 to 122. That's 7. That's 6%.
Yeah, but again, not
That
for
was
the
just an
CPI.
estimate. No, I'm talking about the CPI, the 115 base contract. Originally, you
That
were
was on
proposing-
additional land that was not being maintained prior.
Okay,
Okay, so it wasn't on the same land.
okay,
So
That's no Oklahoma discussion.
okay.
yeah. So we really believe it's going to, I mean, I hate to give you, but what we're looking at right now is, again, to take off the $1.5 for the landscape and get the irrigation down to perhaps 3. And then we're looking at really hard at the $6 for the additional land. And we are looking possibly even going flat on that when all is said and done.
But do we have your word that you will not increase that contract more than the CPI of Tampa? Because unanimously on our street, we do not feel that this particular contractor deserves an increase any more than the minimum.
Yes, I agree with you. So I would say, yes, I will say that on the contract that you had last year for those services, I will tell you that for those services, it will not go over that CPI.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and then on the maintenance end of it, I agree with you. And as far as who's the accountability, it rolls from the landscape contractor, who, as you said, is here every Tuesday morning. They can also be reached via work order ticket via the website. And then if that is unsuccessful, then we have a landscape chairperson, Allison Johnson, who would be the second point. And if that doesn't work, then I would be the third point. And then ultimately, you would go to the board of directors. So that's the accountability line right there.
Thank you.
I'd like to explain the irrigation piece so that everyone understands that. The documents, especially for Phase 3, states that those items would be handled by the landscape contractor through the contract, and it would be administered, the responsibility to make sure that it was done through the board of the HOA. That then is a pass-through. Whatever your neighborhood irrigation costs for that year were would then be paid for not by the individual homeowner, but all the homeowners in that particular neighborhood. So the $5 is to create a pot of money to pay that irrigation. And in addition to what has been done in the past, they were fixing pipes and things. The irrigation controller would also be repaired if it needs to be done. If at the end of the year, your neighborhood, which had collected $5, did not spend all of their money, that money still belongs to your neighborhood. That would be in a fund line item for each one, Vareo, Casaberry, Maleta, Bambay, and so forth. So the following year, if your neighborhood didn't have any irrigation repairs, your money for irrigation repair is already in there. And there would probably be a cap of how much would be needed. And if the next year there was not the necessity to have a contribution, then you wouldn't be charged that extra $5 because you have the money there already.
And to add on just a little bit, thank you, Don. So we're looking at this on the master budget. It's very analogous. We think that each budget, each neighborhood and the master could use a surplus of funds. And we're looking to build that through a contingency line item. And so you can look at that fee. If it doesn't go to the irrigation, as Don said, it would build up that contingency. And say if each neighborhood needed $10,000 surplus just to have in your bank account, I guess, if you will, once we reach that threshold is when Don is saying we can look at either lowering the rate or using it for other things. It would be up to the neighborhood because it's your money.
I've got a question. Is the irrigation a capped figure, or could it, obviously there could be a surplus, but could there be a deficiency at the end of the year?
That's my job to make sure there's not. I mean, if there's a deficiency, then this is a reason, thank you. This is a reason why that number is conservative, because once we make this assessment, we don't want to come back in February or March or April and say, oops, I need more money. So that's why the number's conservative. And again, what makes us feel comfortable with having a conservative number is the fact that you have zero surplus. And then to that point, after a few years, and you have that surplus built into your neighborhood, then we can be a little bit more aggressive on that budget number and not have to worry so much about these things popping up because we have that contingency, that surplus of funds to draw back on.
Jerry, would you also address, she talked about the $28 in the contract for irrigation, how those individual numbers came to be?
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I think it's like $15 it was listed in the contract. But basically, the Florida Evergreen contract had it broken down how to get to the $115.75. And there is a number, and there's like 5 or 6 line items, and there's a number in there for irrigation, and there's a number in there for mulch. And the mulch number was around 13, 14, something like that, and the irrigation number was around 21, 22. What that means is if you crunch the numbers real quick, it was about $200,000 for irrigation and about $100,000 for mulch. Well, that obviously didn't ring well with us, so I called the owner of the company, and basically what happened is when it was in the 11th hour of the budget RFP process prior to selecting a contractor, and the general manager called this particular company back and said very quickly, within a day or two, he needs to present his numbers using these same 5 or 6 line items that were broken down, and I guess so we could get an apples to apples comparison. And further, the general manager gave him the percentages to use for each of these line items. So the contractor just blindly went in and applied those percentages to those line items. So quite honestly, it doesn't mean a whole lot. The aggregate number is good, but you can't really go on those line items. And the reason I brought in the mulch into the equation is the mulch was about 50% less than it should have been, and the irrigation was double what it should have been. So if you flip those two numbers, for instance, you can really see from an optic that it makes a lot more sense that it would be $200,000 for the mulch and $100,000 for the irrigation. And what the irrigation includes is a full-time licensed irrigator on site, fully dedicated to the property, a vehicle that's dedicated to the property, and all the irrigation equipment that goes into the vehicle. Basically, it's a one-stop shop for irrigation that we have on site. And while even $100,000 is a little bit high, even for that, it makes a little bit more sense if you just flip those numbers, and you could really see quickly the explanation that the owner of the company gave me why these numbers came out the way they did. Last thing I would like to say is what we're doing is creating a budget. We are going to bid out all of our contracts. I think most people, and I think we feel that Crawford's doing a pretty good job on what they have. I think the areas that we're looking at aren't related to deficiencies on the area that they're maintaining. It's what we're looking at. What's hurting us are the things they haven't been maintaining. And so again, it's a little bit of an addition there. Nevertheless, the bidding process will sharpen everybody's pencil, and it always makes the performance go up as well during that period. Yes, ma'am. You would need to come to the podium, please. Thank you.
Hey, wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
In line.
Sorry about that.
In line with us.
Jim, go ahead. Sorry.
Jim Schweiger, Greendale. Ladies, I'm proud of you. Your husbands are home in bed. We're outnumbered about 20 to 1. Board, you're working on the proposed budget. There's rumors going around all over this community. I don't care where you go, and they're not factual. I'm just going to give you one of them. Social events in this club. 2016, actual was $28,075. Budgeted $30,000. 2017, $32,659. Budgeted $41,500. 2018, $38,880. Budgeted $50,000. 2019, as of the end of July. That's the last financial statement I have. And I got this off the website. $11,827, budgeted $50,000. Now let me give you the background. Gary came here about 16, maybe 15, don't quote me. The gentleman left. He did major things for adults and children. Where we didn't watch was the general manager of what else we spent in social activities. And if you want to dig out the records, go and get them. They're somewhere. But somebody's saying they had a party, $720. You know what? One of my neighbors comes home from up here and says, the Board of Governors had a party at Christmas last year. $720 for booze and food. That's not factual. The club employees had a party. I don't know who approved or who didn't. And another example, city manager comes and talks to us. We have 150 people. You know why? Because they got a free meal. To me, we don't need that expense. Of 1,000 some people, probably 10 have interest in the city if it don't involve Sandoval. So that's a waste of money as far as Jim Swiger's concerned. Now, I'll get criticized, and on the Facebooks, they'll beat me up. I don't care. As long as I live, I will fight to keep the budget down. And I don't know if 11,000 is right or not. Maybe we did not do anything for the adults or kids since January, because I'm not a social person. So please, look at that social event. And the people at home, I'm telling you, it's factual. If you want to come to my house, I'll show you everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So I'd like to comment on that as well, for the board's edification as well. And currently we have, like Jim said, $50,000 budgeted expense for lifestyle. We also have a $5,000 budgeted revenue for lifestyle. So the aggregate is a negative $45,000. So essentially, we decided as a group a year ago that in 2019, we were going to spend $45,000 on lifestyle events. We have had conversations, none formally, about the different groups that we're offering activities for. Basically, what I want as a general manager is guidance from the board, and then we will meet those requirements. Meaning, you know, we haven't crunched it yet, but if there's a need for 25% of our events to be for children, 25% to be for families, 25% to be for seniors, and the other 25, I can't even think what the other category would be, we'll do that. You know, so what this board should be tasked with is giving the general manager guidance on that. Now, there may be some legwork that we need to do for the board to be able to make that decision, and we'll be willing to do that. But I just want everybody to know that this is a conversation that we're having, and our desire is to spend that $45,000 in the most equitable way. And we always have the ability to lower it. We could raise it, we could lower it. I mean, if we lower it, what does that mean? It just means that the end user pays a little bit more for the events. So, but again, that's more of a board decision.
I would also add that in a budget, you designate a certain figure. That doesn't mean you have to spend it.
Correct.
And at the end of the year, if you don't spend it, then that helps balance your budget in other areas where the line item is over.
Well, that's a good point, because this year, while we only spent about $12,000 through July, we are real heavy in expense in the third and fourth quarters, especially the fourth quarter with all the holidays. Nevertheless, I have a feeling right now, after talking with Libby in the past month, that we'll probably end up about $10,000 with the positive variance. So we're probably looking at $35,000. Which at a $12,000 in July makes a little bit more sense. And as if you guys go to the board meetings and know, right now we're reforecasted to finish the end of the year at a negative $18,000. So what I basically do is take all the actuals whenever I get the financials through, in this case, through July, so through August now, and then I'll predict based on those actuals where we're going to finish the year. And again, we're at a negative 18. But I also use conservative numbers going in as well. So while I say a negative 18, you can almost look that's a worst case scenario. In all likelihood, it would probably be around 10 or 12. If I get 10 from Libby, then I'm only 2, and believe me, I can save $2,000 in December if I have to. So I'm very optimistic right now that we're going to end the year balanced. Next month will be a very important month for that reforecast. To make sure we didn't climb too much higher than the 18 that will enable us to finish where we want to finish. Yes, next. Oh, Marilyn, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that budgets are guesstimates. They're not actual, and I think they should probably be adjusted every quarter. You take a look at where you are and where you think you need to be and make the adjustments.
Okay, and essentially, we can't obviously change the budget, but during the reforecast process, we essentially do the same thing. Meaning, you know, right now I've got 15 negative variances, but I also have 15 positive variances. So if I was to produce a new budget, it would look different. But it's really just the reforecast, not adopting a new budget, if you will.
Okay, not having an adopted budget adjustment. It's
Reforecast.
Reforecasting.
Right. It does the same thing.
Yeah.
It's going to let us know where we're going to be at the end of the year.
Okay.
And we stay on that every month to keep us on track. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to know who is responsible for the littorals that are climbing up some people's lawns? My lawn, actually. I've been going back and forth with Allison Johnson for the past year. She knows about the problem. I've spoken to Matt. I've spoken to Scott. I had people there. It just seems the ball keeps flying from one hand to the other. I've been told, well, maybe you could personally hire somebody professional that would take care of this problem for you. I didn't plant these littorals. They weren't here when I bought the house. They are literally climbing up my yard. I just want to know who is responsible for these. They're invasive. I was told by Matt that they are a perfect climate for moccasin snakes, for rats. Can't see if there's an alligator in there. Kids come by going fishing. You don't know what's in there. It looks ugly. I have half of them are squished down. Some of them are up. It's a dangerous situation. I've been told by another gentleman who came with Scott that the situation looks urgent. For a year this has been going on, and nothing has been done about it. I'd just like to know who is responsible for it, because I didn't plant the littorals. If I did, I'd pull them out. I don't really think it's my responsibility to go out there and pull these out when I don't know what's in the inside of them. And when I spoke to Matt, he says, well, it's not his job. His job is just to trim, mow, edge, cut. So I'm asking you guys, who's responsible for these littorals? I know, I looked around my lake. I don't see anyone that has them crawling literally up their lawn the way mine is.
That's what I
Mary
mean.
Lynn DeRosa,
What's your address?
2689 Clairfont Court.
So to answer your question, the HOA, the homeowners is typically responsible for things that go to the lake edge, and then the HOA would be responsible for the documents say to the lake edge.
Okay,
So-
which means I'm not responsible for the littorals.
Well, you
They're
said
up
they're
to my
coming.
lake.
So again, typically to the lake edge, it would be you. If if there was something in your yard up to the lake edge, it would be you. However, common sense would prevail if the HOA planted something in the lake and it was invading on your property.
Exactly.
The HOA would take care of that. So we've got your name and address, and I will come by and take a visit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What was your last name? I'm sorry. Yeah. Rob?
Good morning, Robert Zivkovic from Fairmont Cove Court. Thank you all for doing these budget workshops and taking your time. I appreciate your volunteering. I'd like to follow up. I think Marilyn was on the right path when she was discussing on if we're going to change the budget down the road or we're going to move funds. This board is going to approve a budget here over the next couple of months for certain items, for money to be spent on certain dollars. After that, it's the management companies to make sure that management company's responsibility to make sure those dollars get spent according to the board's wishes. If there are changes in where those dollars end up or are running to go, that should come back to the board. And I think that's where Marilyn was going. And it's our control. We got to remember, and this is a reminder to the board and also maybe some folks that aren't familiar with the process. We're in charge of our money. It's the management company to carry out the management company's job to carry out our wishes. So when we're talking about reforecasting as opposed to a formal budget amendment or bringing it back to the board, that makes me nervous because I know Pope's history and there are a lot of dollars and questions I have from the past, but I'd like to get a clearer answer on whose authority can the budget dollars be repurposed. I also, for the treasurer, maybe I'd like to see how are we handling control of the funds and how much information are we getting? Because it sounds to me from folks I've talked to that we're not getting all that information on where our dollars are going in terms of, even with the Pope contract, in terms of salaries and things like that. So these are our funds. And I don't think it's unreasonable that Pope give us all the information on where those funds are going.
And to be fair, I agree with the term Pope. However, it would really rest on my shoulders because I'm the one that's involved on a daily basis with the budget. And I would say that the finance committee and the board every month gets financials that will show those variances for every line item. So they can see places that we've saved money and they can see places where we've gone over. And what we manage is on aggregate. I mean, it's literally, as you can imagine, with 70 or 80 line items, it'd be literally impossible to finish at or under budget on every one of them. We would love that. but it's just not going to happen. So how we report that is on a monthly basis to the finance committee and to the board.
Right. But it's not the reporting, that's if we get our reports on time, which we've had, maybe it's better now, I'm not sure how it is. In the past, it's been a little bit sketchy. Maybe that's reporting, okay, what just happened. What I'm talking about is if we're trending towards a number that's a big negative and we're gonna have to change our numbers, that's not up to Pope to decide we're gonna take funds from here and use it here, or hey, I've got this extra money, let me go spend it. That's the board's responsibility. And when do you go to the board and say, hey, I have a shortfall here, we need to make up?
Well, so there's one bucket of money we're talking about. What we don't do is go to another source if we're running low and borrow money. So the budget that we approve and the assessment dollars coming in, that's it. So within these, let's call it 80 line items, I'm not sure how many there are, but say 80 line items, you know, that we might spend $100 more in one and $100 less in another. That's where, on a monthly basis, the board and the finance committee is aware of it. But again, I don't envision a scenario where we would use money from another source. What we would do, if that's a worst case scenario, nightmare situation, is a special assessment. I've been in this industry 17 years. I've never had one.
Okay, and I'm not talking about special assessment. I understand special assessments. I'm talking about just those dollars. So making up for a shortfall. When do you go to the board if the budget is going off track?
Every month.
What I hear Rod saying is not you were going to another source like reserves to get money. When you go over on a line item, the board should have some input into, okay, we need to change that line item, make it larger so that you can live within the new budget, not that
Pope has the discretion to move the funds around, correct?
that you can say, okay, this line item that I want to spend more money on, we're going to go $20,000 over, but I'll cut something else 20,000 down, and that's your decision. He's saying the board should make that decision by changing the budget.
I am under I have zero knowledge that the board has the authority to change a budget without a community input once it is approved.
And I'm under zero knowledge that a manager has the ability to change the budget.
Not changing the budget.
It is if it's reformatted.
It's not reformatted. It's my guess. Basically, I go through this practice so I can. It's managing the budget.
So what you're saying is it's not formally done. Is one whereby you try to balance things without formally changing anything, whether it be monthly, quarterly, or however.
Yeah, and to be a little bit more clear, it's really not even me trying to balance things. It's me predicting where each line item is going to end at the year based on the budget and our actuals.
But what you're trying to say, though, is that we're approving a number.
Yes.
And then it's up to you to come in within that number.
That is correct.
Okay, I think I'm under the impression we're approving a budget to be spent on these items. So the line items are relevant in terms of what authority the board is giving you. You have X amount to spend on landscaping. If you come in way over and you came in under somewhere else, you know, the fungibility of moving dollars from one to another, either for whatever reason.
Yeah. So I think I think you're bringing up a great point, and I think that Bill should probably put this on the Finance Committee agenda for further discussion. But again, I think we may be talking the same thing. So I would say one other thing.
Rob, I'd like to say that since Jerry got on board and since we started looking at the finances in an entirely different way than we had done in the past, every single board member is now getting the full budget before the board meeting. And the entire packet, not just a summary that has been pruned and trimmed so that it looks good. We get every single number, and I think it behooves every board member as their responsibility fiduciarily to analyze the information that you've gotten so that when you come to the board meeting, you're not just listening and someone's telling you and you're assuming it's correct. And so with that information and also the fact that how many months now have we had the budget prior to the board meeting? We changed it to the 4th. And I
You
think.
mean the financial statements
Yes,
prior to the board meeting?
yes, that's what I mean.
Every month.
Every month. So that has
Since-
changed. In the past, we would have the board meeting and the financials still weren't there. So that has changed completely. We now have it, every single board member has it, and they have the opportunity to look it over. And as far as I'm concerned, anybody that wants to ask me, I have it available. I mean, it's not a secret, it's our money.
And actually, we're getting the financial packet prior to the board meeting. We're also getting it prior to the finance committee meeting, which is a week before the board meeting, and the finance committee all has copies of that. So, but I hear what you're saying, that we should, as a board, say, okay, we need to increase landscaping because we're spending more than that. Informally, we're all aware of that, and that's kind of a decision that we've taken, that we're watching the bottom line, and we're watching where it's going internally, and it better not, the bottom line better not go over the total.
And I understand that, Bill, but the problem with only looking at the bottom line, we've got a
we're
2
looking at
million
every
plus-
line item,
Right.
but that's kind of
Not
the-
everybody does. And
Well,
what Don's saying
okay.
should have always been going on, and it hasn't been. And the problem is, when we get it, you get it, numbers that these are funds that are already spent.
True.
Based on the manager's discretion.
True.
And that's where my concern is, and that's where we've got to be careful of not getting things after the fact or coming up, okay, now we see the problem, we can't do anything about it. Those dollars are out the door already. And that's where my concern comes in terms of, and Don, whether Jerry, and now things are running better, as I always said from the beginning, we have to have processes in place that protect us from the worst board member or manager possible. And we've not had that in the past, and we've run into issues. So that's what we needed to make sure is that the board has control and understands where it goes. And because what I'm hearing, Jerry, is you've got the budget, this is approved, and I can do whatever I want as long as the bottom number's okay. I'm not comfortable with that. And I don't think somebody who's if landscaping comes up short because whatever, we had a bigger Christmas party, that we haven't had that issue, but without the controls in place, we could have the issue.
From my personal standpoint, coming from the school board, every school board meeting, there is a budget adjustment document prepared, and it is adjusted monthly. And personally, I would be more comfortable with doing just exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you. Hopefully, the board takes that into consideration.
That's why I referred to budget adjustment, because that's what we're used to, rather than reformatting.
Thank you. My name is Ted Durr. I've been here 8 years. I live at 2546 Anguilla, which is the last house in Section 2. For those who might be concerned, my good friend Rob did not gyp me or get in front of me. We talked. He works, I don't. So he has additional responsibilities. I'm here today to thank the board for their listening to people and for what they have done so far, specifically being mic'd. I can now hear you in the back of the room. I appreciate that. I want to thank Jim for using my financial paradigm that I talked about at the Finance Committee the other night. Makes it very, very easy to track expenses when you look at the year 2016, what was budgeted, what was spent, 2017, 18, 19, you can budget and understand, I think, very quickly. My concern here is going to be simply, I'm not in favor of a dues increase. And my second concern is I'm not sure that the board understands their role as a board. The board has three major responsibilities. One is to guard our money, the fiduciary aspect. One is to set policy and to act as a unit, not individuals. And third is to hire people to do whatever the policy and direction that we want to go in. No one was born as a board member, trained as a board member. And if you think you need that, maybe we should take a couple dollars and hire someone to explain how you behave as a board member. Individual board members cannot call people in the community and act for the board. That's the board president's responsibility, and he would act based on what the majority of the board wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so how we're going to roll this meeting, it's a little bit different than what was originally planned. And the reason it's different is because what I alluded to earlier, had no one come up and talked about landscaping. The plan to do was I was going to let the board know we had about 5 or 6 changes to the budget since the last board workshop. I am going to go over that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about landscaping and finish off what perhaps I haven't talked about. And then we're going to go to one more round of closing statements by the audience. And then we are going to be having another budget workshop. We just don't know the timing yet. We are expeditiously working with both landscape contractors right now to try to get the numbers a little bit sharper. And to the other issue we're having is related to responsibilities for each landscaper. Unbelievably, I think everybody is a little bit aghast that we have 2 contracts that quite honestly don't have the detail that should be within a contract, specifically exhibits and things like that. So we're looking at land ownership and issues like that. We're also working with the landscapers to try to get their numbers down. I think that this week, early next week, we will pretty much have the information that we're going to have in a timely basis. And so that leads me to think that within a week to 10 days, we will be able to have our final budget workshop but before we go into the special meeting to approve the budget. That meeting was originally scheduled, it hadn't been announced, but that meeting was originally scheduled 2 weeks from today, anticipating that we would be where we need to be to have consensus on a budget. And then I would mail the budget out to the owners, and you would have it at least a week in advance, and then we would meet. We have until, quite honestly, the statutory deadline is December 1st. So we do have some padding in this process to work with. But again, I think we might only need a couple of weeks. But you will be notified via e-blast on when our final workshop is. So with that said, I wanted to go over with the board the budget on some changes that have been made to the draft budget since our last workshop. Bear with me on my computer. The first number that changed, you can follow down through me. I'll tell you what the old number was and then the new number. On the income from resales, it was at 432,000. I changed that to 354,000. It falls a little bit more in line with 2 things. One, a little bit more conservative on revenue, thinking we may have just had a really good year on resales. And the other reason I use that number is that's the recommended funding level for our reserve study from reserve advisors. So, and I included that same number in the expense side as well, so it's a wash line item. For the audience, this is the $3,000 that the HOA receives upon a resale, and it comes in to the HOA through our revenue side of our operating account. Then it goes out of the operating account through an expense line item and into the reserve fund. The next number I changed was really academic. It was the Halloween line item. It was a wash last time at 12,000. I moved that down to 6,000 just to get it a little bit more realistic with what we will probably spend.
I'd like to make a comment. The line item on resales at $354,000 would equate to 118 homes being sold for the year. I think that's important to understand where that number comes from.
The next line item is on-site personnel. That number reduced. It was 420,596. It reduced to 377,242. And the primary way that reduced, I was using a burden rate that was higher than agreed to by the board. And essentially, that's the primary reason that number went down. and we're still working on, we have a controversy over 1%, so, basically what we're charging is
Actual taxes.
6.85, excuse me, 9.85 on federal tax, FICA, and then a 3%, a 3% number up and beyond the payroll, which is the burden. And what we're working on is if that should be 2%. We should have that number easily within the next day or two.
So
of the week.
is that all that goes into that number?
That is correct.
No
Up
worker,
and beyond payroll.
no workers' comp insurance
No,
coverage?
that's the taxes. The
Yeah.
9.85 includes working comp, state unemployment, all those taxes that you have when you do a payroll.
So we're assuming the HOA is paying for workers' comp insurance under your budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next number is off-site storage, and that changed just, I got the August financials in.
Okay, just take a look at that.
Okay. Right. It complies with that statement.
I think that Pope agrees to carry at its own expense workers' compensation and employee liability insurance for all Pope employees.
Okay. I'll get a breakdown of the taxes.
Okay, because I believe what you said was that we're paying for it, when in fact the contract says Pope should be paying for it.
Okay, so there are federal and state taxes up and beyond workers' comp, but I will get a breakdown of the taxes in that number.
And so just to be clear, what I'm asking for is what our burden obligation is in addition to the taxes and what the breakdown of the remaining components that the HOA is assuming responsibility for, including workers' compensation and employee liability insurance. That's what I'd like to see, okay?
Okay. Next number is the off-site storage. It was changed from 4,500 to 4,800, just to go in line after receiving all those financials with the reforecast. And then the next number is the offset to the Halloween revenue. Next number is the offset under reserve. It's the 354,000. It's offsetting that 354 in revenue. And the last several are regarding utilities, and again, it was a direct result of the reforecast. The first line item, streetlights, was originally 139,740. It reduced to 137,292. The next line item, electricity gates, it was 8458. It reduced to 8,094. The next number, tennis courts, it was 1,132. It reduced to 993. The next line item is the clubhouse. Electricity was originally 12,564. It reduced to 12,273. Next line item, the electricity for the pool, basketball court, and site, it was 34,581. It reduced to 32,558. Next line item was electricity, other miscellaneous. It was 17,524, and it reduced to 17,398. And the next one, water sewer.
Question on 6,700, the bulk telecommunications cable invoice. I'd like to know if we've reviewed the contract and know exactly what the percentage of increase is going to be and at what years that is. I think we all need to know that so we understand the contract and we understand when the built-in increases are.
Okay. I will send that information out via email to the board.
Jerry, I think it is helpful to explain to the residents that there is an escalation clause in the CenturyLink contract that's hitting us next year and does impact our operating budget next year. Maybe you can explain that a bit.
I'd rather have yeah, I can explain it in general terms, but I'd rather have the contract in front of me to give specifics. The contract is extremely long and has a lot of different taxes, sometimes on quarterly, sometimes monthly, and it does have an escalation. And I believe, I just cannot recall what the escalation is, but there is a minimum and a maximum to their sole discretion that they can have year over year. And I budgeted, anticipated the largest amount on there, and I used that, primarily used my last few months of that bill to see, because the escalation was in March, and so we shouldn't see it again until the next March. But I will send the board all of the details to that contract.
Sewer, I have from my paperwork the last time that it was 2002-01. You are saying now that it is 6,730. So that's an increase, major. I think somewhere along the line some numbers have been confused.
So the total projected for this year is 6,534, and that was a corrected number. Yeah, well, again, it was a corrected number after receiving August financials. The total projection for 2019 is now 6,534. We've already spent 5,612.
This difference is 2002-01, you have 6,730. I mean, this is from last week to this week. So how did that change? What's the difference there?
Looking at the August financials and reassessing that line item.
So it took a huge jump.
It did.
I thought the 2,000 was low when, when we met last time, just looking at my residential bill.
And then trash disposal went from $25.95 to $24.15. And those are all the changes. And right now, we're sitting. I have an 8% increase, but we do have we have $44,773 in savings.
Can I?
So we're at, if we use that money, we would be at a 6.7% increase. If we did not assign that money to anything through the savings of the on-site payroll, that's where we saved the $44,000.
Can I make a suggestion or two?
Please.
Under meetings, it's $35.50, and with the I understood that cost was mostly to rent facilities, and since I was able to find the charter school that charge far less than the Lee County School District or the city charges for the yacht club, I think that number can come down at least 2,000.
It also includes printout material that we send to the homeowners. And again, these are budget numbers,
I know.
not actual. So sometimes in cases like the entire line item for the year is $3,550. Based on your information, we might be able to finish around $2,500.
Oh, I think it could be much less
With
than
all
that.
the mailings going out to the community?
Yeah.
Okay.
at least I'd like to know what the ballot cost is, because I'm sure you're talking about printing and mailing.
Right.
And you
Or if you
reduce,
divided that up into meeting room expense versus
yeah,
print material so that it's more self-explanatory.
because you can't change the mail cost, but you can change the meeting cost for rentals.
What portion of that 3,000 is the meeting room? Would answer that question.
I'll be able to give you that breakdown. Any other questions? from
Yeah,
the board?
Jerry, soon we're going to be coming online with this aeration project. Is that electrical expense, will that be in 6615 electricity other, or has that been estimated or accounted for? You know, there's going to be,
Yeah, it was included. It was, let me find out where it was.
I think you included $75 per month per meter.
I did. Let me see if I have that in the narrative. Hang on just a second.
Is there any way to find out from LCEC what the cost is per meter?
Well,
Or-
I'm estimating,
Yeah.
you know, you could estimate 100. I thought I used the 75 figure, and I could be right on it or I could be off, and I don't know. It's a motor, and how much that runs, and it runs 24/7. The street light portion of that, I figured is $110 a year.
Mm-hmm.
streetlights won't be much.
No, because it's an LED bulb.
The pumps could be substantial.
Right. Do you think that 75 is reasonable?
Yeah.
What's the minimum cost per meter? Because there's a minimum cost for every meter charge
True.
per month. So whether you use the electricity or not, there's a minimum.
Electric bills divided
I'll
up
get
into
your answer.
distribution,
I'll have
generation.
to go to my notes. I don't have it
There's
right in
several
front of me.
costs involved in that.
And the total number of meters,
I think it's 8. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure
Do
it's
you
about 8.
anticipate we would ever be at minimum?
No. If they were just the street lights, the answer to that would be always.
The answer to your question about CenturyLink
Mhm.
is that year 4, we go up by $3 per house, and we've contracted for 1,428 houses, so it would be under the 930 that Jerry has budgeted.
On here.
But effective next year, it can go up 4.5% per year, forever.
That's important to know because that affects,
The telecommunications.
well, yeah, it affects, that's exactly right.
Did you go over that last point again, please? What percentage raise?
The CenturyLink contract calls for, in year 4, it will go up $3 per house for cable and internet. So that would be within, that increase is reflected in Jerry's number in the current budget. So the budget's good. Starting in year 5, which is September 28th of 2020, it can go up at CenturyLink's discretion up to a maximum of 4.5% per year, each and every year. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was in the contract already.
Correct, yes.
as I recall, we had a 10% per year increase when we had Comcast. So this is a huge difference right there.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, we'll take some comments from the audience. Jim, you need to come up to the podium, please.
have a question for Marilyn. Did you get any more information on the insurance?
I haven't. I did contact him again yesterday by email, but I
still
haven't
owe
heard
him.
back from them.
I
Did-
still owe them some information. I've
You-
given a preliminary, and then they
Okay.
followed up, and I just have not had time to.
Okay, because the additional information they needed, which I received, 5 or 6 days ago, I forwarded it on to Jerry. So if,
Is McGriff or what?
yeah. And if he didn't send them the information, that's why I don't have the information.
Thank you.
I did check with the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, which I let Bill know because him being treasurer. They cannot invest our funds because we don't do a charitable type contribution at all. It's all to serve our community. So therefore, there was not that opportunity. I also checked with the city on the landscaping outside our fence, and they're responsible for the portion on the other side of the sidewalk, which for us is a street. For the residents, there is a grassy area that they are responsible for.
Okay.
What I want to say is thank you for this. We have 40 people sitting out here. We didn't understand one word you said because we don't have a copy of what you're talking about. Now, is it because it's a projection, or could you give it to you? I mean, the paper will cost money, but I'm telling you, I don't know about the rest. I understood it because I watched the finances, but I bet 80% out here didn't understand what you're talking about. Is it possible to hand that out at the next budget workshop, or is it too much money?
I think it should be.
I think it should
I
be
think
up
it
here.
should be put on the screen.
Yeah.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Appreciate
We're
it.
trying to save the budget here, you know.
I mean, quite honestly, the reason it's not projected is I would have to sit at the bar. I can start doing that if you would like.
I don't know about us, but I know the school board has doc cams in every classroom where you could lay this on that doc cam
Yeah.
and it would project. So you could have the doc cam right here, sit with us and let them follow along on the piece of paper.
That's what the city has too for our city council
Well, I think
meetings.
there's many documents. It would be nice if you saw what we're looking at. I'm
Number
in favor
two,
of that.
I'll go ahead and get a hold of LCEC on the meters and stuff for you and come back and report back, okay? Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Cohen. I'm sorry I was late. I had to take my grandson to school this morning, and I live at 2608 Clairfont Court. I just wanted to mention something that I've heard, maybe rumor, but I would like to clarify that if we can, about changing the entranceway to Sandoval. I think most of us feel it is beautiful, it looks beautiful, it was done a couple of years ago, and I know we all want some sort of an expansion, primarily expanding this room so we can have meetings or activities or functions where everyone can attend without having to sign up. When we play bingo, when the snowbirds are here, everyone has to sign up. There's not even enough room to hold everybody. For the Valentine's party or any other potlucks or whatnot that we have, it's a sign up, and not everybody is able to join in. So I understand that we cannot do the expansion that was proposed, but one thing that I think 90% of the community will agree is that we need a larger room here. So however that could be done, and I know it wouldn't be the expense of what was projected before. But the fact of changing the landscaping as we enter this property, it's beautiful. I've had many people say it's beautiful. I know these people will say it's beautiful, I have friends come here. It's just beautiful. That would be a great expense, and I think it would be a waste of money. That's it.
Any other questions? We can adjourn now if you would like.
Okay, and no other questions. Thank everyone. We'll continue to work on this and come up with a proposal at the next workshop. Thank you.
Don, can I ask? Yes. The next workshop, can it be scheduled in the evening?